channel. Hopefully you guys are excited for this video because this is the only thing that I've been getting requested to film for the past 3 weeks. So today's video is going to be all about studying, how I study effectively, my tips for studying, and also how I take my notes. But don't worry, other content is still coming for those of you who are getting very tired of this school stuff. So I'm going to be starting this video by going through all my study tips and how I study, all the apps that I use for studying, how I plan out everything, and then I'm going to go into how I take my notes for the second half of this video. First things first, I like to get a good night's sleep. This morning I woke up at 11 a.m., which is not early at all. Next, I make sure to have a good breakfast. You guys know what I do in the morning already, and I'm going to be coming out with the school morning routine very soon. And then the next thing that I like to do is change out of my pajamas. Obviously, there's something about working in clothes that are slightly uncomfortable, but still obviously casual and comfy. So I'm just wearing like a crew neck and leggings. So yeah, wearing clothes like that definitely will really help you get in a more productive mindset, and studying in your pajamas definitely is not the way to go. And then obviously I also have coffee, but I definitely do not drink coffee every time that I study. I mostly just did this for the video. But sometimes if I'm really feeling tired, then I will get coffee, and this is just like whipped coffee because that's literally the only coffee that I know how to make. Next thing is getting a clean workspace. So that means figuring out what you need for the rest of the day. I really recommend just getting rid of all the textbooks, papers, and worksheets that you will not need, because all that clutter is honestly just going to stress you out. So I'm actually starting with science today, so I have my chemistry textbook out. Definitely having a clean workspace is a really good idea, and also it'll give you less of a distraction, because sometimes for me, if I'm feeling really unproductive, then I'll just use cleaning my desk as an excuse to get out of doing work. So it really helps you limit the amount of distractions that you have around you. Next thing that I do, I usually do this to plan out my time after school. And basically what I mean by planning out my day is blocking off chunks of time to figure out which work I'm going to do, how long I'm going to do it for, planning out my breaks, and all of that type of stuff. So planning out a schedule, I always use Google Calendar. I've been using Google Calendar for the past like 3-4 years, and it's just what I use to plan out my events when I don't have school, planning out my classes when my assignments are due, when I have a test, all that type of stuff. It's really nice to just have laid out in front of me. I don't use a paper planner. I've tried multiple times. I've just found that I really just can't stick with it. So what I'll do is I'll go into Google Calendar and go into the day that I'm looking at, and then I will just begin blocking off chunks of time for the work that I'm going to do. So I'll say 2:45 to 3:15 I'm going to work on my science lab, take a 10-minute break, and then from 3:25 to 4 o'clock I'm going to work more on my science lab. And usually I'll either do 25 minutes of work and then a 5-minute break and then keep that cycle going, or I'll do 45 minutes of work and then a 10 to 15 minute break. The 25 minutes of work to 5-minute break ratio is called the Pomodoro study technique, and I've mentioned it in my videos a couple of times, but that's basically just what it is. It's just working for 25 minutes and then taking a 5-minute break. I'm not really the biggest fan of it because I feel like 25 minutes is too short of a time to get really immersed in your work, and I feel like right when I hit that 25-minute mark, I'm just really starting to get into everything and I'm getting into the flow of things, and then my timer goes off. But if you are the type of person who struggles to find motivation and is constantly reaching for their phone and stuff like that, I think starting with 25 minutes of straight work is definitely a good place to start. So once I've gone into Google Calendar and I've planned out my loose schedule, I begin to work. Ever since this year started, I've found that when I study, what really helps me focus is having something to listen to in the background. I never used to be like that. I always used to be the type who hated when music was playing or just any sound in the background because it really just distracted me and bothered me. But for some reason now I've changed in that way, and I really like having a bit of background noise. I typically go for lo-fi. Chilled Cow is a YouTube account and they're always live streaming lo-fi music. So I typically always reach for that, or I just have lo-fi playlists on Apple Music or Spotify that you can look up. Study ambiance is another thing that you can listen to. About 2-3 weeks ago, I was listening to that a lot. It's just like satisfying sounds. Harry Potter study ambiance. Okay, I know that sounds weird, but let me get you on this. If you like Harry Potter, then please try listening to a Harry Potter study ambiance. It's just like the nice quiet chill music from the soundtrack. There's just like satisfying office sounds, like some parchment. It's nice background music. It's very calming. There's also like nice like rain sound, Hogwarts ambiance. And the last thing that I sometimes play in the background while I'm studying is just a study with me video. Here's the handle of the girl that I often watch for real-time study with me videos. Sometimes those study with me videos will also have timers going, so you can follow along with their timers, and once again it's just nice background noise. So now I want to go more into the whole timer and the Pomodoro thing that I mentioned. I often like to time myself so that I work for a straight amount of time and then I time myself for a break. and then I go back to work and set another timer of straight work. So by timing myself and blocking out these chunks of time, it just helps me find that motivation when I'm really struggling to. So the Pomodoro technique, as I mentioned, is something that I sometimes use, however, not very often. If I'm running really low on motivation, then I'll definitely reach for that, but most of the time I like to do 45 minutes of work to a 10-minute break. So this app I've shown in my videos a lot, and you guys keep asking me what it is. I mentioned it in my last video, but some of you still didn't catch it. So the app is called Flora. So here's the Flora app. It looks like that. So basically with the Flora app, once you start a timer to do a set amount of focus time or like straight work, then it'll start planting like a rose or a tree. And then if you open another app, so like let's say you open Snapchat while your time is still going, during your focus time, then it'll kill your tree. But that's just what I use to block out my time. Now just for some like miscellaneous random tips. Number one is to really learn about what kind of learner you are. Maybe you like to study by watching videos and YouTube videos. Maybe you benefit more from writing your notes by hand, or maybe you benefit more by writing your notes on your laptop. And this is really just through trial and error, figuring out what works best for you, and then really tailoring your study techniques and your study days to how you are as a learner. Next, what's really important for me is having a nice comfortable chair. So I always put a pillow behind my back. I also recently invested in this textbook stand, and it's from Amazon. I'll link it down below, and I've been loving it. I used it this past week. If you are in person, have a lot of textbooks, a lot of workbooks and stuff like that you need to refer to or take notes on, I would definitely recommend investing in a textbook stand. Those are all my study tips. If you have any more questions, please comment them down below, and now we're gonna go into how I take my notes. So time for how I take my notes. I always pick a color scheme for the chapter that I'm doing for those notes. So for this one, I went with a pink and green theme, kind of like a watermelon. So I just picked out different pens and highlighters that corresponded to that color theme. So for my notes, I used this 5-star 3-subject notebook. It's just a notebook that I've always used for my notes, but I just decided to take a piece of paper out to show you guys how I take these notes. The first thing I always do is write out a heading, so I just take a highlighter and then write out my text in all capitals. This is basically just like a standard heading that I do for pretty much all of my notes. It's pretty basic. And then I take a ballpoint pen and then I just go over those capital letters, except I write in cursive, just like very thin, fine cursive over top of the highlighter, and it just looks really, really nice and very clean. Next, I will take a ruler and I will draw a line separating the right and left hand side of the page with a little left hand side column. And this is because I write my notes in Cornell note template, and you can look it up and do more research into how Cornell notes are formatted and the purpose of them. I'm not going to go into that in this video, but basically the left hand column is the recall column. So in this column you're supposed to write study cues, titles, quotes, questions, anything that will help you remember the information on the right hand side of the page. Right hand side is where you write the main components of the notes, so basically everything important goes in the right hand side, and then the left hand side is just the recall column. So I'm writing these specific notes from my AP Human Geography textbook, but keep in mind that I'm not actually writing these properly. I left out a bunch of information from my textbook. This is just for me to show you guys how I format my notes and me trying to show you like the different headings and stuff that I use in the system. It's notes that you guys can refer back to these notes for actual information, so please don't actually read them and use them. Anyways, this is just the heading that I'm doing, so I basically make it look like a little banner. So I do a rectangle around the text and then just add the little decorations on the side, and then taking a mild liner, I'm just highlighting the text. To write out my information, I always like to use these little arrows, and then I just write whatever I'd like, and I write the main gist of my notes in this black ballpoint pen. But sometimes if I have like a little fun fact or something that I want to include, I'll write it in colored pen, and it just helps it pop. Then for a sub point that's just branching off of the arrowed point, I'll use a little dot or a bullet point. And then here's me writing in the recall column just a little question that connects to all the information written on the right hand side of the page. So here I'm just continuing with the same sort of format with a little heading and then writing my arrowed point. Another thing that I sometimes like to do is just box off bits of information to help it stand out and separate it from the rest of the notes. Another thing that I like to do is sometimes include a little image in my notes. This just helps break up all the words, and sometimes I'll either put a diagram in for my textbook or I'll just do a little doodle that I can find on Pinterest. And then once again, here's me just continuing with the little banner heading and then writing out my arrowed points. And just another little type of box that I like to do just looks like this. It's just a cute little detail to separate the information. So I just do a little box around the text, and then I just have these two little arrow ends on the side with two little dots. It's just like a cuter type of box. Sometimes I do like to put post-it notes in the recall column with different bits of information. It's kind of just a cute little way to add the information and it helps it pop a little bit more. And then I just kind of continue with the same format all the way down until I finish writing out all my information.